She never expected anything anymore. At 80, you stop expecting. You stop waiting for the phone to ring with good news. You stop believing that something is about to change. Life settles into a rhythm, quiet, predictable, safe, and you tell yourself that's enough. Donna had told herself that for years. Every morning, same chair, same window, same cup of tea going cold before she remembered to drink it. The neighbors waved. The mailman came and went. The days moved like slow water, gentle, yes, but going nowhere. She was fine with that. Or at least, she had convinced herself she was. Then one Tuesday morning, ordinary as any other, the letter arrived. No name on the front. No return address. Just her name, handwritten in ink that looked older than it should. She almost set it aside with the grocery flyers. Almost. But something made her stop. She stood right there in the hallway, still in her housecoat, and carefully opened the envelope. Inside, no letter. No explanation. Nothing written at all. Just a key. Old iron. Cold and heavy in her palm. The kind of key you don't see anymore. Long, ornate, made to last a lifetime. Maybe longer. And engraved along the side, in small careful letters, VRM. She turned it over slowly. VRM. 3 letters that meant absolutely nothing to her. Her daughter Claire called it junk. Stopped by that afternoon, took one look, and laughed softly. Mom, it's probably from some old storage unit. Someone sent it to the wrong address. Just throw it away. Donna nodded. Said she would. She didn't. That night, long after Claire had gone home, long after the street outside went quiet, Donna sat alone at the kitchen table with that key lying in front of her. The lamp was low. The house was still. And she just looked at it. She couldn't explain what she was feeling. It wasn't excitement exactly. It wasn't fear. It was something older than both of those things. Something that lived in the part of you that doesn't use words. Like recognition. Like her hands remembered this key, even though her mind was certain it had never seen it before. She picked it up again. Felt the weight of it. VRM. Who sends a key with no explanation? Who mails something like this to an 80-year-old woman living alone and says absolutely nothing? And why, did holding this cold piece of iron feel like touching something she had lost a very long time ago? She tried to reason with herself. Old age plays tricks. Memory blurs at the edges. She was being foolish. But the feeling wouldn't leave. So she did something she hadn't done in years. She trusted it. She placed the key carefully under her pillow, turned off the lamp, and lay in the dark, wide awake, with the quiet and certain feeling that her life, this small, settled, finished-feeling life, was not actually over. It had just been waiting. For exactly this. She woke up before sunrise. No alarm. No noise. Just awake. Completely. Like something inside her had already made a decision while she was sleeping and was simply waiting for the rest of her to catch up. Donna lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling. The house quiet around her. That familiar morning stillness that used to feel like peace. Today it felt like a starting line. She reached under her pillow. The key was still there. Cold. Real. Heavy in a way that had nothing to do with iron. She held it above her face in the pale dark and looked at it. VRM. 3 letters. Still no meaning. Still no explanation. But somewhere between falling asleep and waking up, the confusion had shifted into something else entirely. Certainty. She was going to find what this key opened. She didn't know how. She didn't know where exactly. But she knew, in that deep, wordless way that the body sometimes knows things before the mind agrees, that she had to go. She got up, made tea she barely touched, and started packing. It took her a while to remember how. The suitcase had been sitting in the top of the closet for 13 years. Since Frank passed. Since the world shrank down to this house, this street, this careful quiet life. She pulled it down slowly, set it on the bed, and opened it. It still smelled faintly of the last trip they'd taken together. Some coastal town. Frank laughing at something she'd said. Wind in her hair. She stood there for a moment. Then she folded her cardigan and placed it inside. Claire arrived by mid-morning. Donna hadn't called her. Somehow she always just knew. Mother and daughter that way. One feeling something, the other showing up. But this time, Claire didn't understand. "Mom." She said it the way you say someone's name when you're trying to be patient. "You're 80. You had a hip replacement 14 months ago. You can't just drive off alone chasing some mystery key like this is some kind of adventure." Donna kept folding clothes. "People are going to worry." "Then they'll worry," Donna said simply. Claire stared at her, searching her face for confusion, for the early signs of something going wrong in the mind. Donna recognized that look. She'd seen it more and more these past couple of years. That careful watching. That gentle anxiety disguised as concern. She reached out and touched her daughter's hand. "I'm not lost, sweetheart. I'm actually, for the first time in a very long time, I think I know exactly what I'm doing." Claire didn't look convinced. Neither did June from next door, who appeared at the front door 20 minutes later with a casserole dish and a furrowed brow. "Donna, at least take someone with you. You shouldn't be driving alone at your age." Donna finished for her, gently, with a small smile. June had the decency to look embarrassed. Donna thanked her for the casserole, covered it, left it on the counter, and went back to packing. The envelope had carried a postmark. She'd looked it up that morning, Harlan's Creek, a small town, 4 hours east. She'd typed the name into her phone, stared at the map, waited for something to click. Nothing came. And yet, there it was again. That whisper underneath the silence. That feeling she couldn't argue with and couldn't explain. Like standing outside a door you've never seen before, and somehow already knowing what's on the other side. She zipped the suitcase closed, lifted it off the bed, slowly, carefully, her hip reminding her it was there. Carried it to the front door, and stood for just a moment in the hallway of the house she had lived in for 40 years. Looking at the photographs on the wall. Frank, Claire at her wedding, the grandchildren growing up in frames. A whole life. A real, full, beautiful life. And still, something missing she had never been able to name. Maybe that was the most frightening thing of all. Not that she was leaving, but that she had no idea what she was about to find. She locked the front door behind her, walked to the car, put the key, that strange, heavy, engraved key, in her coat pocket where she could feel it, and drove east, toward Harlan's Creek, toward whatever she had been running from for 60 years. The town appeared slowly, not all at once, the way cities announce themselves with noise and light and motion. Harlan's Creek crept into view quietly, like it wasn't sure it wanted to be found. A water tower first, then a grain silo, then rooftops low against a gray winter sky. Donna slowed the car without meaning to. 4 hours of driving. 4 hours of open road and her own thoughts and that key sitting heavy in her coat pocket. She had used the time to talk herself out of this at least a dozen times. You're being foolish. You're 80. Turn around. Go home. Drink the tea before it goes cold. But her hands never once turned the wheel around. And now here she was. She drove through the main street with her window down despite the cold. Needed to feel it, the air of this place. The particular silence of it. Old storefronts with hand-painted signs. A hardware store. A post office the size of a living room. A church with a notice board that hadn't been updated since autumn. Everything looked like it had simply stopped. Sometime around 1965. And quietly decided that was fine. Donna drove slowly. Eyes moving. Heart loud. She didn't know what she was looking for. A door. A building. Some landmark that would reach out and say, Here. This is why you came. Instead, something stranger happened. The town felt familiar. Not in a way she could point to. Not a specific street or storefront or tree. More like a frequency. A feeling underneath everything. The way a song can feel familiar before you remember the words. Like her body had been here before, even if her mind had no record of it. That frightened her more than she expected. She parked on a side street. Sat in the car for a moment with both hands on the wheel. You're imagining things. She got out anyway. The diner on the corner was the only place that looked open. Small. Warm light inside. A handwritten menu taped to the glass. Donna pushed the door open. A small bell announced her. 3 tables. A counter with 4 stools. The smell of coffee and something baking. Cinnamon, maybe. Ordinary and warm and completely unremarkable. Except for the woman behind the counter. Mid-60s. Silver hair in a long braid over one shoulder. Strong hands. The kind of face that had seen enough of life to stop being surprised by most of it. She looked up when Donna walked in. And froze. Not dramatically. Not obviously. Just a half-second where everything in her face went very still. Coffee pot mid-pour. Eyes locked on Donna's face. Then she recovered. Smiled. Finished pouring. What can I get you? Just coffee, please, Donna said. Settled onto a stool. She watched the woman's hands. Steady now. Careful. You okay? Donna asked quietly. The woman glanced up. Something moving quickly behind her eyes. Fine. Sorry. A small laugh. You just remind me of someone I used to know. Long time ago. She set the coffee down and moved away before Donna could ask anything more. Donna wrapped both hands around the mug. Let the warmth travel up through her palms. Someone I used to know. She sat with those words. Turned them over slowly. Outside the window, the street was empty. A dead leaf moved across the pavement in the wind. Somewhere a door creaked open and shut. She left money on the counter. More than enough. And walked. Block by block. No map. No plan. Just her feet and that feeling, that quiet, insistent, impossible feeling that something here was waiting specifically for her. She turned left at an old pharmacy. Right past a boarded-up barber shop. Down a narrowing road where the houses grew older and the trees grew closer together. She almost skipped the last turn. A small side road. Unpaved. Overgrown at the edges. Easy to miss. But something made her take it. And 30 steps in, she stopped walking completely. At the end of the road sat a house. Old. Weathered. Windows boarded. The garden completely overtaken by years of neglect. But the gate. She could see it clearly even from this distance. The gate had a lock. And even from 30 steps away, she already knew. Her hand moved to her coat pocket without her telling it to. Fingers closing around cold iron. She stood there in the silence of that unpaved road. And for the first time since the letter arrived, she was genuinely afraid of what she was about to find out. She didn't move for a long time. Just stood there. At the edge of that unpaved road. Wind moving through dead grass on either side of her. The cold finding its way through her coat like it had something to say. The house at the end was maybe 50 yards away. 50 yards. Less than a minute of walking. And yet her feet stayed exactly where they were. She had driven 4 hours. She had packed a suitcase after 13 years. She had ignored her daughter's worry and her neighbor's concern and every single sensible voice in her own head. She had come all this way. And now, 30 steps from whatever answer was waiting, her body simply refused. Donna stood there and let herself feel that. Didn't fight it. Didn't push through it with false bravery. Because it wasn't fear exactly. It was something more complicated than fear. It was the feeling you get when you're standing at the edge of knowing something that will permanently change everything you thought was true about your own life. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. She knew that. Standing there in the cold. She knew it completely. And she walked forward anyway. The house was worse up close. Paint stripped down to bare gray wood. The porch sagging on one side. Two of the front windows boarded with planks that had since warped and split. A drain pipe hanging loose, swaying faintly in the wind. But the structure was still standing. Still solid underneath all that neglect. Like something that had refused to fully give up even when everything around it did. The garden, what was left of it, told a different story. Weeds everywhere. Thick and tall and completely reclaimed by time. But if you looked carefully, and Donna did look carefully, she didn't know why but she looked very carefully, you could still see the shapes underneath. The raised edges of flower beds. The line of a stone path. A wooden trellis collapsed against the fence, still tangled with the ghost of something that had once climbed it. Someone had loved this garden. Deeply. Deliberately. The way you only love something you intend to stay with forever. Donna felt a pressure in her chest she couldn't explain. She reached the gate. Up close the lock was exactly what she'd known it would be from a distance. Old iron. Keyhole ornate and exact. The same craftsmanship as the key in her pocket. She stood there for a moment with her hand not yet moving. Just breathing. The wind dropped suddenly. The street behind her went completely silent. Even the swaying drain pipe stilled. It felt, and she knew how this sounded, she knew, it felt like the world was holding its breath. She pulled the key from her coat pocket. Her hand was trembling. She told herself it was the cold. She told herself that firmly. She placed the key in the lock. Turned it. Click. That sound. So small. So ordinary. A sound she had heard 1,000 times in her life. Doors opening, locks releasing, ordinary moments of ordinary days. But this one moved through her like something electric. The gate swung open. Smooth. Easy. No resistance at all, as though the hinges had been oiled last week instead of untouched for decades. Like it had been waiting. Like it had always known she was coming and had simply been patient about it. Donna stepped through. The garden path beneath her feet was cracked and heaved by years of frost and thaw. She moved carefully, her hip, always her hip, but she moved. And as she walked that short path toward the front door, she felt something shift in the air around her. Something she had absolutely no language for. Not danger. Not quite. More like proximity. Like getting closer to something that had always existed just at the edge of her awareness. Something she had spent 60 years almost remembering. The front door was ajar. Just slightly. A dark gap at the edge of the frame. She pushed it open with her fingertips. The smell reached her first, dust and old wood and something faintly sweet underneath. Like dried flowers. Like a drawer full of old letters. The light inside was pale and thin, filtering through gaps in the boarded windows. Everything gray and still and suspended, furniture shapes in the dimness, a coat hook by the door with nothing hanging on it, a small table with a cracked ceramic bowl. Donna stepped inside. Let her eyes adjust. And then, across the room, against the far wall, in a thin shaft of winter light that fell exactly there as though deliberately placed, a photograph. In a simple wooden frame. Slightly crooked. A young woman. Dark hair. Maybe 22, 23. Caught midlaugh, the real kind, the unposed kind, the kind that happens when someone says exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment. Donna's eyes moved across that face. Once. Twice. And then her hand went to her mouth. And her legs, those legs that had carried her 80 years through everything life had asked of her, simply stopped holding. Because the woman in that photograph was her. She stood there for a very long time. Not moving. Not breathing properly. Just looking at that face in the frame. The young woman in the photograph was laughing. Completely free. The kind of laugh that lives in the whole body, head tilted back slightly, eyes bright, something genuinely joyful happening just outside the frame. Dark hair loose around her shoulders. A light summer dress. Standing in what looked like a garden. This garden, Donna realized slowly. This exact garden. Before the weeds. Before the years. When someone still loved it. She recognized the stone bench in the background. She had walked past that bench 10 minutes ago. Her legs carried her closer to the photograph without her deciding to move. Closer. Until she was standing directly in front of it. Close enough to see the small details. The way the young woman's hand was raised mid-gesture. The ring on her right hand. Simple silver band. Donna's right hand moved slowly to her own right hand. There. Had been bare for as long as she could remember. She pressed her fingers together. And felt nothing. No memory. No explanation. Just this terrible, hollow certainty growing in her chest like cold water rising. That face was hers. 60 years younger. But hers. Unmistakably, undeniably hers. She stepped back from the photograph. Turned around slowly and looked at the room with completely different eyes now. Everything she had glanced at when she first entered, the dusty furniture, the pale light, the old ceramic bowl, she looked at all of it again. Properly. Searching. The rocking chair near the window. Dark wood. High back. And draped across the arm of it, a quilt. Folded neatly. Green and cream. A pattern of interlocking diamonds repeated across the whole surface. She crossed the room. Reached out. Touched the fabric. And something happened that she had no explanation for. Her fingers knew it. Not her mind. Her mind was still arguing, still insisting this was impossible, still building walls as fast as this moment was knocking them down. But her fingers knew this quilt. The weight of it. The particular softness of fabric washed hundreds of times. Her hands moved across the pattern and something deep and wordless in her body said, "Yes, this. I know this." She pulled her hand back like she'd been burned. Stood in the middle of that dusty room. Heart going too fast. Breathing too shallow. Think, she told herself. Think carefully. There is a rational explanation for all of this. But the rational explanations were getting harder to find. She found the kitchen by following the pale light. Small. Simple. A window above the sink that looked out over the dead garden. Dishes still stacked, dusty now, on open shelving. A table with 2 chairs. 2 cups on the table still, as though someone had simply stood up and walked away mid-morning and never came back. She opened the drawer nearest the door. Empty. The second one, cutlery, rusted at the edges. The third drawer, deeper, at the bottom. Letters. Dozens of them. Bound in small stacks with faded ribbon. Envelopes handwritten in ink gone brown with age. All of them, every single one, addressed to the same name. Vera. Donna stared at that name. Vera. She didn't know anyone named Vera. Had never known anyone named Vera. The name meant nothing to her, no memory attached, no face, no feeling. And yet, her hands were shaking as she lifted the first stack. The ribbon fell away at her touch, old and dry, done waiting. She took the letters to the table. Sat down in one of the 2 chairs. The one on the left, and only after she sat did she wonder why she had chosen that one so automatically. Like habit. Like a 60-year-old habit her body still remembered even though her mind had forgotten. She opened the first letter. My dear Vera. It has been 3 weeks since you disappeared and I have written to every place I can think of. Nobody will tell me anything. Your mother won't come to the door. I don't understand what happened. I don't understand how a person can simply vanish from the world. Please, if you receive this, please just tell me you're alive. Edmund. Donna read it twice. Then she opened the next one. And the next. Each letter a little more desperate than the one before. Each one from the same hand, Edmund, searching, pleading, refusing to stop believing she was somewhere alive and reachable. The date stretched across 4 years. 1964 through 1968. The last letter in the final stack was the shortest. Just 3 sentences. I've stopped trying to understand why. I've stopped asking questions nobody will answer. Wherever they took you, Vera, I hope you found a way back to yourself. Donna set that letter down on the dusty table, and sat very still in the pale winter light of that kitchen, because something was happening inside her that she could neither stop nor fully understand. Something was moving in the deepest part of her, slow and enormous, like a continent shifting, like something locked so long it had forgotten it was locked, beginning, finally, to open. She had a different name once. She was almost sure of it now. And someone, something, had buried it so completely that it had taken 60 years and a stranger's key to begin digging it back up. The letters sat in front of her on the table. Vera. She looked at that name until her vision blurred. And somewhere, very quietly, something inside her answered to it. She didn't move from that chair for a long time. Just sat there in the pale kitchen light. Letters spread across the table in front of her. The name Vera appearing again and again and again in Edmund's handwriting. Patient, desperate, heartbroken, like a man calling into an empty room and refusing to accept the echo as an answer. Outside the window the winter sky had shifted. Darker now. Late afternoon arriving without permission. Donna hadn't eaten. Hadn't had water since the diner. Her hip was aching from the drive and the walking and the cold. She noticed none of it, because she was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere between who she had always believed she was, and whoever this kitchen, this quilt, these letters were insisting she used to be. She gathered the letters carefully, stacked them, set them aside, and went back to the drawer. Underneath where the letters had been, she almost missed it. A thin cardboard folder. Brown. Edges soft with age. Held shut with a single piece of string wound around a small paper button. She unwound it slowly. Inside, newspaper clippings. 4 of them. Cut carefully, kept carefully, by someone who understood that what was printed in those pages mattered. She unfolded the first one. A small article. Local paper. The headline modest, almost deliberately understated. Family confirms removal of young woman following episode. No further comment. Dated October 1964. Donna read it twice. Then a third time. Slowly. The language clinical and cold in the way that language from that era often was when it wanted to say something shameful without quite saying it. Episode. Such a careful word. Such a small, tidy word for whatever they had actually done. She set it down and opened the second clipping. This one slightly larger. A different paper, county-wide, not local. A brief follow-up piece, clearly written by someone who had tried to dig deeper and been blocked at every turn. Sources confirm the young woman was transported to a private facility outside the county. Her name has been withheld at the family's request. No further information is available at this time. Private facility. Donna sat back in the chair. She understood, in her bones, in her blood, in that place where the body holds knowledge the mind has never been given permission to access, exactly what those words meant. She knew what families did in 1964 when a daughter became inconvenient. When she loved the wrong person. When she refused the future that had been selected for her. When she had the audacity to want something different from what she'd been assigned. They didn't argue with her. They didn't negotiate. They simply made her disappear. New name. New town. New life constructed carefully around her like a cage made to look like a home. Enough medication, enough isolation, enough enforced silence, and eventually the old life stopped feeling real. Stopped feeling like memory. Started feeling like something you might have dreamed once, long ago, when you were someone else. And if it worked well enough, you helped them. You stopped asking questions. Stopped reaching for what you couldn't quite remember. Stopped grieving a life you no longer had words to describe. You became, completely, convincingly, the person they had decided you should be. Donna sat with that understanding for a long time. Not crying. Past crying somehow. Sitting in something deeper than tears, a vast, still, terrible clarity. She found the third clipping. This one wasn't an article. It was a notice. A missing persons appeal, handwritten originally, then printed in the local paper's community section. Brief. Desperate in its simplicity. Searching for Vera Rose Mallory. Last seen Harlan's Creek, October 1964. Dark hair. Brown eyes. Age 22. If you have any information, please contact Thomas Mallory or Edmund Hale. Vera Rose Mallory. 3 words. Donna said them very quietly in the empty kitchen. Felt them in her mouth. Felt the shape of them. The weight of them. VRM. She looked at the key on the table beside the letters. VRM. Vera Rose Mallory. The engraving she had stared at for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of turning it over in her hands, wondering, searching, and the answer had been there the entire time. Sitting right on the surface. Waiting for her to reach a place where she was ready to read it. Her initials. This key had always been hers. She was still sitting there, very still, very quiet, the kind of quiet that exists on the other side of something enormous, when she heard footsteps on the porch. Slow. Deliberate. Someone who knew this house. Someone who had walked that porch before. The door, still ajar from when Donna had entered, pushed open a little further. The woman from the diner stood in the doorway. Silver braid. Steady eyes. A face that carried something it had been holding for a very long time. She looked at Donna sitting at the table. At the letters. At the key. And something in her expression shifted, relief and grief arriving together, the way they often do when something long waited for finally comes. "I followed you from the diner," she said quietly. "I'm sorry. I needed to be sure." She stepped inside. Stood across the table. "You're Vera Rose Mallory," she said. Not a question. Not even close to a question. A long, slow breath moved through Donna's entire body. And the woman who had been Donna for 60 years looked up at the woman in the doorway and didn't say no. For the first time in 60 years. She didn't say no. The woman's name was Sylvia. She said it quietly, standing in the doorway, like she understood that this moment needed to be handled gently. Like she had rehearsed this, not the words exactly, but the care behind them. The particular gentleness required when you're about to hand someone back 60 years of stolen truth. She pulled out the chair across the table, sat down slowly, and looked at Donna, at Vera, with eyes that had clearly been carrying this for a very long time. "I'm Edmund's youngest sister," she said. "I've lived in Harlan's Creek my whole life. Never left." A small pause. "Some of us don't." Donna looked at her carefully, searching her face for something familiar. Some thread connecting this woman to the letters scattered across the table. To the name Edmund written again and again in that desperate, faithful handwriting. She found it. Around the eyes. Something in the shape of them. Patient and quietly stubborn. The look of someone who had decided long ago to wait for the right thing rather than settle for the convenient one. "He talked about you," Sylvia said. "Not always. Not to everyone. But to me, yes. All his life." Donna's throat tightened. "He never married." Sylvia shook her head. Simply. Without drama. Never found anyone he wanted to. The silence that followed that sentence was the loudest thing Donna had ever sat inside. She looked down at the table. At Edmund's letters. At 60 years of faithfulness written in ink gone brown with age. A man who had loved someone so completely that no substitute had ever come close enough to bother with. And she had been alive that entire time. 4 hours away. Living as someone else. Completely unaware. What do you do with that? What do you do with the knowledge that someone spent their entire life quietly keeping a door open, and you didn't even know the door existed? She didn't have an answer. She wasn't sure one existed. Sylvia reached into her coat pocket, pulled out an envelope, set it carefully on the table between them. "He left instructions," she said. "Years ago, when he knew he was sick. He told me, if you ever find Vera, however many years it takes, give her this. Give her the key first." Then this. Donna looked at the envelope. Her name was on the front. Not Donna. Vera. Written in that same handwriting she had spent the last hour reading. Older now, shakier, the pen heavier, but unmistakably Edmund's hand. She didn't reach for it immediately. Couldn't. When did he pass? She asked quietly. 6 years ago, Sylvia said. March. He was 84. She paused. He was peaceful at the end. I want you to know that. He wasn't angry. He wasn't bitter. Her voice steadied itself carefully. He just wanted you to know the truth before it was too late for it to matter to you. Before it was too late. Donna was 80 years old. She felt the weight of that phrase settle over her like the green and cream quilt still folded on the rocking chair in the next room. She picked up the envelope. Opened it carefully. The way you open something you understand cannot be unopened once you begin. Inside, a single page. Folded twice. The handwriting slower than the letters, but the voice was exactly the same. Steady. Honest. Carrying everything it felt without apology. Vera. If you're reading this, then Sylvia found you. Or you found your way back on your own. Either way, you came back. That's enough. That has always been enough. I'm not writing to make you feel guilty. Please understand that. I'm writing because you deserve to know what actually happened. Not the story they gave you, but the real one. Your mother came to me 3 days after you disappeared. She told me you had a breakdown. That you were being treated. That contact from me would make things worse. I believed her. God help me, I believed her, for about 6 months. Then I started asking questions, and every door I knocked on closed in my face. By the time I understood what they'd actually done, it was too late to find you. I want you to know one thing. Just one. What happened to you was not your fault. You were 22 years old and you wanted your own life, and they couldn't forgive you for it. That failure belongs entirely to them. You were never broken, Vera. You were just inconvenient. There is a difference. A very important one. Live whatever time you have left as yourself. That's all I ever wanted for you. Edmund. Donna set the letter down. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. She had expected to fall apart, had been bracing for it quietly since she walked through that gate. Expected tears, expected grief, expected the kind of collapse that comes when 60 years of pressure finally finds a release. Instead she felt still. Not numb. Not empty. Still. The way deep water is still. Not because nothing is happening, but because what is happening is too large and too real for the surface to show it. She looked across the table at Sylvia. He was a good man, she said quietly. The best I've ever known, Sylvia answered. No hesitation. Donna nodded slowly. Looked at the photograph on the wall, that laughing girl in the summer garden, joyful and free and completely unaware of what was coming. She looked at her for a long time. And then, quietly, privately, in the still place behind everything, she said goodbye to the girl who had been taken. And hello to the woman who had survived it. Because that young woman in the photograph hadn't been erased after all. She had been carried. Through 60 years and a different name and a whole constructed life. She had been carried. Right here. Right back to where she started. She stayed in Harlan's Creek for 4 days. Nobody expected that. Sylvia had assumed she would read the letter, sit quietly for a while, and then drive back to her life. Back to the house and the chair and the tea going cold on the windowsill. Donna surprised her. She asked Sylvia if there was somewhere simple she could stay. A room somewhere. Nothing much. Sylvia didn't even pause. You'll stay with me. Those 4 days moved differently than any days Donna could remember in recent years. Slower. Fuller. Like each hour had more inside it than usual. More weight, more texture, more of whatever it is that makes time feel real instead of just passing. She spent the first morning back in the house. Alone this time. Sylvia understood without being asked, left her at the gate with a thermos of coffee and no instructions. Donna walked every room. Slowly. Her hip reminding her it was there, but she moved anyway. Through the dusty kitchen, the sitting room, the small bedroom at the back with its iron bed frame and its window looking out over what had once been a vegetable garden. She opened every drawer. Every cupboard. Not searching for anything specific anymore. Just reacquainting. Like visiting someone you loved after a very long time apart. Taking them in. Noticing what had changed. Noticing, with a kind of quiet wonder, what hadn't. She sat in the rocking chair by the window for almost an hour. Just rocked. Slowly. The green and cream quilt across her lap. Outside the dead garden moved gently in the winter wind. She didn't cry. She had expected to cry in this house, had steeled herself for it. But what came instead was something she had no precise word for. Something between grief and gratitude. Between mourning and relief. Like finally setting down something very heavy that you had been carrying so long you'd forgotten it had weight. On the second day she walked the town properly. All of it. Every street. Every corner. Harlan's Creek was small enough that by afternoon she had covered most of it, twice in some places. People looked at her. A few older residents, people in their 70s and 80s, people who had been here in 1964, looked at her with something careful in their eyes. Recognition trying to surface through 60 years of time. One woman stopped her outside the post office. 70s. White hair cropped short. Hands twisted with arthritis but eyes sharp as anything. She looked at Donna for a long moment. Then said simply, "Vera Rose." 2 words. Barely a whisper. Donna looked back at her steadily. "Yes," she said. First time she had said it out loud. To anyone. Including herself. The word felt strange in her mouth. And true. Both at once, strange and absolutely, undeniably true. The woman reached out and briefly touched her hand. Said nothing more. Walked on. Donna stood on the pavement outside the post office and breathed the cold air of Harlan's Creek and felt, for perhaps the first time in 60 years, like she was standing in the right place. On the third evening she called Claire. She had been putting it off. Not from cowardice, or not entirely. More because she needed to understand it herself first before she tried to give it to someone else. She sat on Sylvia's sofa. Cup of tea, actually warm this time, actually drunk. And called her daughter. Claire answered on the second ring. Trying to sound casual and failing completely. 3 days of calls going to voicemail. 3 days of not knowing where her 80-year-old mother actually was. Mom. The relief in that single word was enormous. "I'm okay," Donna said immediately. "I promise. I'm okay." And then she told her. All of it. The letter. The key. Harlan's Creek. The house and the photograph and the quilt and the letters and Edmund and Sylvia and a name she had carried unknowingly her entire life. Vera Rose Mallory. She told Claire everything. And when she finished, silence. A long, full silence that Donna let sit without rushing it. Then Claire's voice came back. Quieter than usual. Stripped of its everyday armor. "Mom." A breath. Then, soft, steady crying. The kind with no edges to it. The kind that isn't anger or shock but simply love responding to pain it wishes it could have protected you from. "Why didn't they ever?" Claire started. "Because that's what they did," Donna said gently. "That's what people did." And then enough time passed that it became easier to keep the silence than to break it. Another long pause. "Are you okay? Really?" Donna considered the question honestly. The way it deserved. "I think," she said slowly, "I am more okay right now than I have been in a very long time." Which is a strange thing to say from inside all of this. But it's true. She heard Claire exhale. A long, shaking breath. "Come home when you're ready," Claire said. "I'll be here." "I know you will," Donna said. "That's the thing about you. You always are." She drove home on the 4th morning. Sylvia walked her to the car. They stood for a moment in the cold early light, not quite ready to end it. "Will you come back?" Sylvia asked. "Yes," Donna said, without hesitation, without needing to think. She meant it. Harlan's Creek wasn't a chapter she was closing. It was one she was finally, after 60 years, actually beginning. She put 3 things in the back seat before she drove away. The photograph. That laughing girl in the summer garden, free and joyful and completely herself. The green and cream quilt. Folded carefully, the way someone had folded it decades ago and left it waiting. And the key. She didn't put the key in her coat pocket this time. She put it on the passenger seat beside her, where she could see it, where it rode next to her the full 4 hours home like a companion, like something that had finally completed the journey it was made for. She got home in the early afternoon, walked into her house, set her bag down, stood in the hallway looking at the photographs on the wall, Frank, Claire, the grandchildren, her whole constructed life looking back at her. She looked at it all with new eyes now. Not with bitterness. Not with the desire to tear it down or declare it false. Because it wasn't false. Frank had been real. Claire was real. The grandchildren were real. The love in this house had been real, every bit of it. But now she understood something she hadn't before. You can live a real life inside a constructed identity and the love in it can still be genuine. And you can also, even at 80, reclaim the name you were born with. The self that was taken. The story that was buried. Both things can be true at once. She went to the kitchen. Made tea. This time she drank it while it was still warm. She placed the key on the windowsill, right where the morning light falls first, and stood looking at it for a long moment. VRM. Vera Rose Mallory. 80 years old. A daughter. A grandmother. A widow. A woman who had lived an entire life as someone else and survived it, and was standing here now, in her own kitchen, in the thin winter light, knowing her own name. That was not nothing. That was, in every way that actually mattered, everything. She sat down in her chair by the window. Same chair. Same window. But not the same woman. And here is what she understood now, what those 4 days in that forgotten house had quietly, permanently taught her. The people who erase you are counting on your silence. They are counting on time doing the rest of the work for them. On enough years passing that you stop reaching for what you can't quite remember. On you becoming, slowly, completely, the person they decided you should be. They counted on Donna staying Donna. They never accounted for a key. They never accounted for the part of a person that refuses, no matter how deep it's buried, no matter how many years pass, no matter how complete the silence becomes, to fully forget what it actually is. Vera Rose Mallory had been locked away for 60 years. But she had never, not once, stopped existing. She had waited, patient as an iron key in a yellowed envelope, certain that eventually, someone would come looking. At 80, Donna went looking, and found herself exactly where she'd left her. Right there, underneath everything, waiting to finally come home.